Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the second local intergovernmental budget roundtable for the Sunshine Coast. I'd like to start by thanking everybody for being here today and acknowledging that the Sunshine Coast Regional District is located on the territories of the Shishak and Squamish nations. After several years of varying levels of success at community engagement around budget, we've decided to try continuing with this format for this year's budget conversations. For those that are following along at home, my name is Alton Toth. I'm a councillor with the District of Sechelt and the current board chair for the SCRD. Over the next couple of hours, we're going to be hearing from the local governments on the Sunshine Coast about 2025 budgets and organizational priorities. And after each presentation, we'll open it up to any questions from other local elected. And after all of the presentations are done, we'll open it up to any questions from the public. For those of you that are joining us online, welcome and thank you for tuning in. And while we all know each other at this table, not everybody online knows who we are. So I'd like to ask that the elected, followed by the staff, each introduce themselves, their local government, and their favorite neighborhood in their community or favorite marine animal. Do it a little different this year. Just a reminder for those at home to be able to hear us, we will need to use microphones. And so we've got them spread around the table. We can share them as we need to. And just for my part, I think the beaches of Tawanik are probably my favorite part of Sechelt. So with that, I'll turn it over to Kate. We'll go this way around the table.
Good morning, Kate Louise Stanford, representing Alcatsum House Sound, and I live on Chaltnowich. And my favorite neighborhood in that area is Sea Ranch, which is also where my favorite marine mammal, the California sea lion, tends to hang out and make a whole lot of noise. So.
Great. Hi, good morning, everyone. John Henderson, Mayor of the District of Sechelt. I'm not going to take the bait on choosing which is my favorite neighborhood, but I will say I'm not sure if the Seahawks is a marine animal, but for this week at least, the Seahawks are my favorite mammal.
Hi, Adam Shepard, Councillor Sechelt. My favorite neighborhood is probably the Marmot Road area, just before the provincial park, east side of the Sechelt Inlet. Thanks.
Good morning. I'm Leonard Lee, looking after Area A, Egmont, Pender Harbour. My favorite area is Pender Harbour. And my favorite mammal is the orca. They hang around in front of my place, so it's great to see them.
Hi, Diane McLaughlin, District of Sechelt. I hate to say I don't live in Davis Bay, but I love their beach. So that's my favorite place. And my favorite sea mammal is, well, the small children with their little shovels and sand buckets. Thank you.
Silas White, Mayor of the Town of Gibsons and Director for the town on the Regional District. And Gibsons is such a small area, square footage, that my favorite neighborhood is the town of Gibsons. And I've always liked sea cucumbers.
Councillor De Andrade, Town of Gibsons. Yeah, I would say the same, Gibsons, because it's very tiny. And my favorite animal lately, I have been thinking a lot about whales in general and the incredible environmental role that they have in the environment, steering all the nutrients, and it's magnificent. So.
I'm David Kroll, Councillor, Town of Gibsons. I have to agree with Mayor White, having lived in the town of... No, having lived in the town of Gibsons for almost 50 years, it's a pretty special place. One of my special places, though, is walking the beach of the Chequel Bandland. It's a sanctuary unto itself and a very special place. Animal-wise, they're cute, the sea otter, but they're a plague in our search and rescue boathouse.
I got one here.
Itiquikwi,
Ukmasi, Chilquelwich and Squeesh. Chilquelwit's my traditional name. Raquel Joe is my English name, elected council for the Shishak Nation. My favorite area is Tsonai. That's where my ancestors lived for many, many years. And my favorite mammal is this Dalishan, which is the orca killer whale. Olnomsh.
Thank you. Kelly Bax, I represent Wastem Robbers Creek on the Sunshine Coast Regional District Board, and I have to say that the heart of the creek is our kind of downtown area. It's a really vibrant place, and it's where we socialize as a community. And I saw some otters on the weekend, and I just have to say that is my favorite. We're jumping up and down on the rocks in Half Moon Bay.
Darren Inkster, District of Seashelt. There's many beautiful areas in Seashelt. And I have no favorites, though, much like I will never pick my favorite child. And for sea, of course, the salmon.
Okay, I'll take your microphone, Darren. Donna Bell, District of Seashelt Councillor, and I would say one of my favorite beaches would be in Lambs Bay, which is in Twanik. Incredible place to kayak and around all the islands. And my favorite mammal is a golden retriever. Oh no, I mean is a porpoise, is a flipper the dolphin porpoise. Yours.
Donna McMahon, Area E for the Sunshine Coast Regional District. My favorite part of Elphinstone actually is the mountain, the trails on the mountain, especially in the area of the Pioneer Cemetery, which is just a gem. And this is cheating slightly, but one of my favorite things down at the beach is the oyster catchers. I love how they look and I love how they sound.
Eat quickly, Amos. I don't know if you could hear me. There we go. Lahewos, Shishalt Nation, Yalkamot. Good morning, everybody. My name's Lenora Joe. My traditional name's Yalkamot, and I am the chief of the Shishalt Nation. Raquel stole my favorite place, Tsonai. But as she said that, I was thinking, this summer has been so amazing sitting out on my front deck in Porpoise Bay. So I'm like, I can see the lighthouse and up the inlet and the amount of sea life that has been going on. Like we've been blessed with Stallation killer whales. So that's my animal that I really enjoy. I've been really trying to watch for it. Everybody else has seen it in the bay, and I'm out there with my binoculars, and I've not yet to have a glimpse, but I see all the dolphins there all the time, so it's amazing. Olnomsh.
Thank you. Good morning, bon matin. I'm Justine Gabias. I'm the area director for Half Moon Bay Hualquai, and my favorite neighborhood in Half Moon Bay, I gotta say, is Welcome Woods. That's where I bump into so many people when I walk around with my dog, and there's such a great network of trails around Connor Park. So definitely my favorite. And then my favorite marine mammal, is it mammal or animal? Animal. From a very young age, it's always been humpback whale, so I'm just gonna go with that, my favorite. Thanks.
Good morning, Tina Pro. Work here at the Sunshine Coast Regional District. My favorite neighborhood is where I live in Davis Bay, and I would also say that seeing the humpback whales never gets old. Thank you.
William Wallace, Director of Finance at the town of Gibsons. Right now, Gibsons waterfront, Bluff to Armours Beach. That's what I'm focused on. Any kind of eagles that might be cruising past, I particularly identify with them. Thank you.
Good morning, Emmanuel Ormani, Town of Gibson staff. My favorite place is where I live with my family, which is in Wilkway, Sergeants Bay area. And I love the birds on the shore and the energy of where the sea meets the land and the birds that are in that space. So, thanks.
Dave Douglas. I'm the Director of Financial Services for the District of Sechelt. I would have to say Sergeant's Bay is one of my more favorite places on the coast, and the sea otter would be my mammal.
Good morning, Andrew Allen, Director of Planning and Development for District of Sechelt, and I'll go with favorite neighborhood, downtown Sechelt Village, where I grew up in part on several streets, including Dolphin Street, so I'll double that with my favorite marine animal. Thank you.
Hello, Megan Lee, Director of Engineering and Operations for District of Sechelt. I love the rock formations down at Snicket Park, so I'll say that. And favorite marine animal is an octopus. Thanks.
Hello, everybody. Lindsay Roberts, Director of Corporate and Community Services for the district. Everything I was thinking has been said, so I'm trying to be unique. I think standing on the top of Soames Hill and then being able to go down to Grantham's Landing and jump in the water is probably my favorite thing to do, or up the inlet in any of the camping spots and seeing the phosphorescence at night. And I was going to say the phosphorescence because they are a living creature. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Trevor Rudley, the Director of the Infrastructure Department at the Town of Gibsons. Favorite neighborhood, probably Lower Gibsons. I used to live down there, and being able to walk to a beach that gets sun in the morning and a beach that gets sun in the evening is pretty sweet. Favorite marine animal, probably a seal, because my dog basically is a land seal. So.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Leandra Johnson. I work for the Sechelt Nation. I'm their executive assistant. And I would say my favorite place is probably Sonai, like Raquel's. It's just so beautiful up there and just brings such a calming energy. Thank you.
Thanks. Aidan Buckley, Manager Communications and Engagement with the Sunshine Coast Regional District. I think one of my favourite places, I think it was Councillor Bell who said it, up Lambs Bay. The kayaking off there is absolutely magic. And yeah, and the fact that we get to see, whales pass by where we live, is just, it never gets old. So.
Good morning, Tara Crosby. I'm the Administrative Assistant for Corporate Services. I can't pick a favorite location, so I'd say anywhere from Howe Sound to Earls Cove. I love it all. And I had a run-in with an orca this weekend, actually, this past weekend, where it was chasing salmon and coming straight for my boat.
Excellent. Thank you, everybody. I actually didn't give my favorite animal, which is the otter.
River otter.
All otters. I love all otters, whether they're here or not. I will say, and actually, having born and raised here, I've actually never seen an orca in the wild. Seen humpback whales from the ferries, but never actually seen an orca. So, yeah, those of you who get close encounters, that's super cool and lucky. So, our first presentation this morning is going to be for the from the SCRD. So I'm going to turn it over to our CAO, who's still doing double duty as our CFO, Tina Perot.
All right, so thank you, everyone. So we just have a little bit of a few pictures here to start off our presentation. Our focus today will be a little bit of an overview of the finance, but we'll be focusing on some different areas, one of which was there's some decisions that are coming forward to round two. Some of us have completed our budget process, and we are looking to be completing ours very soon. So here in front of you are just several projects that occurred last year. We have here, I think, one of my favorite pictures that looks like a man on the moon. That's actually our bio cover at the Sechelt landfill, and so that was a pilot project. Very important is it can reduce significant GHGs at our landfill, which is one of our significant emitters, our water metering project, and several projects, Fire Smart being one of our biggest ambassadors in our community. So from the budget timeline, we are about to go into our round 2 budget next week. We hope to be finished on Monday, February the 2nd, where we're going to be adopting our financial plan at the end of the month on February the 26th. Since that time, we have done a community questionnaire back in October, followed by our pre-budget discussions. We had our rates and fees bylaws approved and reviewed at the end of November, with some other questionnaire follow-up in-person engagement in November, followed by round 1 at the beginning of December. So this is the board's strategic plan, and so it focuses on key main areas, which is water stewardship and solid waste. It's a very focused strategic plan. We just actually did an update at our last committee meeting, and it showed where the board would be making probably significant and completed progress by the end of their term, which I think is very impressive. The focus for our budget this year has really been about focusing on our corporate work plans. So if you recall last year, we were wrestling with our significant amount of projects here. We have probably over 200 on our books, and even though we're a very large organization, we're trying to match our capacity with our resources. So that continues to be a significant focus of the organization. And we are still looking at underfunding of our services. So we have several dozen services. So we operate over 110 distinct services at the regional district and about 45 distinct types of services. So it's pretty robust, the amount of things that we do within the community, such as transit, parks, solid waste. And so we continue to be challenged with how we sustainably fund those services. And again, just maintaining our service levels. And what we're trying to focus on is actually establishing defined service level in the organization. And where we're trying to do those types of things are within things you'll hear about later in the presentation, such as our park service review. So just to highlight our draft corporate plan, 2026 will be the second year that we'll have this in place. And so we continue to refine the tool. And again, it's to really align the actual resources that we have in the organization with the amount of projects that we have, and so meeting those. And so it really just highlights all of the significant projects in the organization. We don't necessarily drill down to operational type of ones, because that would be quite a list. And so we're just trying to match, again, the resources to the projects that we have. And then we want to communicate to the public where that proverbial red line is, because we are still challenged with being able to do all the projects. And so the board is making decisions about the ones that might be deferred or will be put forward once the projects ahead of them based on priority will be done. So just to highlight some of the items that impacted our financial plan this year. So here we started off in our pre-budget, and when we go into that particular deliberation with the board and the public, we like to give sort of an overview of what are some of the challenges and what are the impacts coming into our financial plan. We have things that are static, so things like our collective agreement. So we have things that are contractual that impact our finances. We also have contract values, operational projects that will have impacted our budgets. We also have projects that were funded by significant taxation in prior years that will fall off. And so sometimes that'll create a significant dip in a service, especially if they've funded something quite significant through taxation. And we also have a few areas in the organization that have significant debt that fell off in that are going to be falling off in 2026, and that's one of the items the board is going to be talking about and making a decision on, and we'll highlight here, which is the community recreation facilities. We also have the Chapman Water Treatment Plant, so that debt funding from the original construction, which was built 20 years ago, has also fallen off for 2026. So some of the high-level items, we have about 70 budget proposals that came forward to 2026 deliberations through the various iterations of the budget. And that sounds like a lot, but it's actually quite a significant decline than what we've had in prior years. We were over 100, sometimes 130 in past years. So again, when we were talking about that a very large work plan that we have, we're trying to continue to focus and refine that. And again, bring things forward that we can actually do in the particular fiscal year, or at least over the multi-year phasing. So the big things that are still going on here is the official community plan renewal. So the board is looking to make significant progress in 2026, but we're looking to continue some funding towards the latter part of 2026 into 2027. One of the other large significant items, and we actually had an intergovernmental, was our transit expansion. And so if you recall back, I think in May, we had a transit expansion. And so we're still waiting from the province to hear back about our next transit expansion proposal and whether or not we'll be successful for that. We continue to work on our transit and fleet site expansion. So we are actually preparing our BEB buses, so our battery electric buses. And if anyone saw, we've got construction going on with our EV infrastructure here, as well as Mason Road, to facilitate the electrification of both our some buses and our fleet. We also are looking to our solid waste management plan. So last week, we actually put forward our draft solid waste management plan and implementation items. And so some decisions as we go forward to do continued community engagement, as well as our Seashell landfill vertical expansion. And I just want to highlight on the vertical expansion, as there will be an item coming to round 2 to fund the continued engineering and design and feasibility of that particular project. So still some questions to be answered there. But that is going to be one of the most significant financial projects the regional district has ever undertaken here. The draft number right now is about $33 million for total project cost. And so that will be a significant financial undertaking for the community. And so we have to contemplate what that's going to look like for ratepayers. We're also looking at our firefighter compensation. So this year, or actually in 2025, was the first, in August 1st, was the first time that we actually started our firefighter compensation, paying paid on call for our volunteer fire departments. And so that's looking to be permanent in our financial plan. And so that's something that we also did some engagement on as far as what the community was willing to pay. And so we're going to be talking a little bit about the outcome of that particular engagement and that survey. And we continue to focus on water supply. And so we were successful with our alternative approval process to proceed with Langdale Wellfields. And we continue to do feasibility analysis and studies with the hospital wellfield. So with community services, we have on our books, it's a carry forward project, but we're looking at when we can start a recreation needs assessment. We're well underway with our PERC service review, and we look to be concluding the sports field strategy. So I think one of the things that's important to note that the regional district, along with, I know, District of Sechelt, Town of Gibsons, we collaborate on many community partners that provide services to our communities. And so the regional district provides over $1.63 million for 2026. We still have a decision in round 2 to make about the Sechelt Library. And so that's coming forward, which isn't included in this particular number. So it's quite significant. And so we support them through various operating grants. So things we're going to be contemplating at round 2, like I said, vertical expansion, detailed design. We also have some parks projects that have been deferred in past years. So those are coming forward. We also have several grants that we're looking to apply to enhance our Sunshine Coast emergency planning services. Like I said, our public transit expansion. We have another item that's here. It's not a significant item financially, but it is something that we're working with our commercial food growing, our farming community as it relates to both our official community plan and some policy development as far as supporting food growing farmers with water purveyance. And so we're working closely with them on a proposal. We also have our head lease at Hillside. So Hillside Development Park in West Howe Sound. We have been the stewards of the head lease with the province and have been administrating that with the folks down in Hillside. And so there's some decisions about what we want to do there next. And another area is a feasibility study related to the Gibsons and District Volunteer Fire Department. So here is the item related to recreation facilities. So during our various deliberations, as a result of the debt funding for the recreation facilities, so that would be Seashelt Aquatic and the Gibsons Area and Community Center are coming off. There was a proposal in anticipation for whatever the future recreation needs assessment are, whether or not we need to significantly enhance our existing recreation facilities, because we have 4. Within this particular service. The Pender Harbor Pool has its own service, so that's not included in this particular assessment. But the decision is whether or not to raise the amount of capital reserves from 500 to $1 million. And so that'll be debated as part of the round 2. And so that was deferred. I understand that there was discussion at the Seashell Council. So that is going to be brought forward for decision there. I don't know if we want to pause or wait till the end to have discussion about this one, Chair? Okay, great. Okay, so just hitting on some of the numbers, the regional district is looking at a draft budget of almost, $140 million. We're not quite done yet, so this is probably going to be, I'm not going to say significantly higher, but we are trending quite high over the last 5 years, and that's because our capital plans are just growing. And I just want to highlight that this is not cumulative or new money. This also reflects projects, multi-year projects that continue to come into the next budget, so they're not new dollars necessarily. So our taxation for this year, we are looking at, so this is what we call our what if scenario coming into round 2, and even our directors have not seen these numbers yet. So part of this is information within our agenda. So I'm just going to walk through a little bit here, and sorry for the formatting here. We had a little bit of functionality issue because it looks like a typewriter. So the approved line at the top looks like in the blue, the blue area is what we've already made decisions on already, or the items that are baked in the cake. Round 2 budget proposals are the ones that have not been decided yet. So if everything was approved in the package coming forward to our board, that would be the decision. That third line that says rate stabilization. We have a few services that have encountered some very large surpluses, and that has been the result of several staff vacancies. And so we are looking to propose returning that money to ratepayers, so tax reduction. And so it's a combination of support services as well as direct taxation. So that's a decrease to the tax subsidy. And then we did just want to include and separate the landfill closure. We also have a proposal where, as a result of the vertical expansion, because we're possibly extending the life of the landfill, we are currently contributing $900,000 to our closure and post-closure responsibilities. Those are required based on ministry and legislative standards for us to maintain and close the active phases. And so what we're looking to do there is to do a modest reduction until we understand what the full life cycle of the landfill is going to be. There's some projections that might be reduced or extended. And so all of those calculations have to be done. So we thought it was just a prudent suggestion to reduce that slightly for this year. And then we have several surpluses that are coming forward through the annual year end. And so essentially we're looking to a few reductions. The bottom green area is we have several services that only tax based on improvements only. And so That is our fire departments, recreation facilities, Dakota Ridge. So we just wanted to see what the recreation facilities replacement cost was going to be for ratepayers there as well. So our staffing plan here, and sorry, it's really small, but we wanted to just show what our staffing plan has been over the past few years and what we anticipate them going forward and what our staffing, our proposed staffing is for 2026. And a lot of our staffing proposals for this year are directly related to additional service expansion. So I believe that the 4.75 there, and sorry, there's a line through there. 3 of those are related to transit expansion. So if we expand our transit, we need drivers. So that the other ones there are related to projects. So some of those parks ones that we were talking about there. So essentially, we also have some decreases. So temporary staffing that we've had in the past has gone off. So essentially, this is what's approved here on our staffing plan. So where are we at with volumetric billing? So for North and South Pender, we sent out 2 mock bills in 2025, and we're going ahead with volumetric billing for 2026, with the first bill going to be hitting people's mailbox in April. For regional water, we are looking to do a mock bill this summer, and with our draft rates to be presented sometime in May, because for the mock billing, we usually have sort of a draft rate that we need to use. And the difference between North and Pender and where we were at with Northern Pender, we installed meters in North and South Pender almost 10 years ago. And so we've had a lot of time to calibrate the system and to do various types of work there. With regional water, we are just finishing the water meter installations, and so we're not going to have as much time. So there's going to be a little more variability with the regional system. However, the board has really directed staff, let's go ahead and continue to go forward and implement volumetric billing for 2027. So where are our water utility rates? So for North Pender, very unique system. We have a lot of capital requirements up in that system. North and South Pender are separate systems from the regional system, and so they're looking at an increase of about $173. And again, that's because they do have significant capital needs up there. We also have for South Pender about a $210 difference. And so again, we have an $850 fixed fee with $4 per meter squared for their metered rate. And so as you saw too, I'll go back to the slide there, the metered rate for North and South Pender is the same. So for the regional water system, we're still on a flat rate, and so we did not increase user fees for 2026. However, we did increase the parcel tax. That's because we have been significantly reducing our reserves and depleting them quite significantly, and that just correlates with the amount of capital investment that we're doing in our regional system. And so overall, that's about $65 overall. People are going to be paying more for regional water. So one of the requests of our board in this presentation was how we fund asset management in the regional district. I know that the District of Sechelt puts a 3% investment back in their capital. Being a regional district, we're unique in the sense where every service has to be distinct, and so we just fund it based on the specific needs of that particular service. So we have capital plans for our fire departments. We have a draft plan for our utility services that was presented this year as well, and that was part of that rate increase for the regional system as well as North and South. We have a draft one going for parks that's going to continue to be refined, and we are working on our ports, our docks capital plan. That one has not been completed. So we're pretty far along with developing capital plans and providing sustainable funding to our various services. And what we do is we match our capital planning. We don't always assume we need new taxation. We assume we're going to be having some debt servicing for our various services. And so what we're trying to do is fund over the life cycle instead of, we need $1 million this year and having significant variations. So we're trying to create some stability in our rates with the service needs. It's not a perfect system yet. I'm going to turn it over to Aidan here, who's going to talk about public outreach and engagement.
Thanks, Theo. So just a couple of slides just to talk about how we've, as CEO Pro said, just communicated the financial planning process through this year. So 2026 is looking like quite a busy year for us. We're out on several quite robust community engagements. When we see our Fisher Community Plan, Solid Waste Management Plan, Park Service Review, and the Recreation Needs Assessment. In the midst of all that, we've also got mock billing starting for regional water, the real volumetric billing, and that's all in addition to utility billing as well. So quite a lot of work going in to communicate that out. As well, then we have recurring initiatives, such as our composter rebate, our waste reduction initiatives program, and then we look at awareness days and events. So that's things like Emergency Preparedness Week, and we're really keen to put quite robust communications plans around those types of events this year. This year we released a questionnaire back in October around financial planning. I take part monthly in a meeting with other regional district communications people, and in discussing that, a few of them had said they'd kind of gone out and asked their communities about what their service priorities were. So that was the focus on it. The priorities that came back through this were aligned with our board strategic plan in the way of water stewardship and solid waste solutions. It was quite well responded to. We had nearly 260 responses to the questionnaire. Lots of people jumped on to our online hub for our financial planning process. We're trying really hard this year to call it financial planning instead of budget. I think that came last year at this meeting. I think it was yourself, Mayor White, who talked about community dialogues and how you'd had some success in having people involved in that by not focusing everything in on budget. So this year we've been really keen to to more so speak about priorities for our community through this. We also hosted a coffee, cookies and conversations event over at the Seaside Centre. We had 30 people show up, and financial planning was part of it. We also had staff there to speak about our solid waste management plan, our official community plan. Fire Smart were there as well. We talked firefighter compensation, and we talked transit improvements, park service review. So it was a good opportunity for members of the public to show up and to not just hear about kind of where we are at with our financial planning process, but also to get a sense of what we are working on right now and also what's to come in the future. So we're hoping to be able to build on that in the future. Firefighter compensation engagement, then we launched this back in November, and the questionnaire ran up until early January. And again, this was to just kind of receive input from the community on this compensation model, understanding that it's going to be a recurrent budget item for us. And it was really well responded to. We had over 250 responses to the online questionnaire. We supplemented it with a fact sheet, because it can be a wee bit difficult to explain this out to people. So we definitely plain languaged it as best we could. That fact sheet was distributed throughout the community and throughout our volunteer fire departments as well. And then we'll be bringing forward results of that engagement to round 2 budget early next week.
Perfect. Thank you very much, you guys. Maybe if we can flip back to the slide for the recreation, because this is it's a change in the way we're funding the recreation capital. And so maybe if you've got a couple sentences to talk about how the parcel tax is falling off and the mix of what we're looking at going forward.
No worries. Okay, so without all the information, because this was a pretty robust package that was provided to the board, so I I understand that you don't have all the chips with you. So essentially, the regional district was debt funding approximately $24 million. That's what those two facilities cost us. I don't think we could do anything for that nowadays. It was a steal. So essentially, we were funding about $1 million of debt servicing. And so we have been building our capital renewal plans to align with replacement of assets. And right now, the recreation capital plan is only focused on critical infrastructure. It's not funding items of discretionary nature, which surprisingly, that includes things like fitness equipment replacement, the slide replacement. And so that was part of the discussion this year, was expanding how and what we fund within our capital renewal plan. And so in anticipation of needing to do something with either our existing facilities or contemplating what a future facilities would look like, the recommendation from staff was that we keep most of what was being raised through the parcel tax, which was a flat tax, so everybody paid the same. It was about $115 per person. So it didn't matter whether or not you were in a $1 million home or you were in a trailer park, everybody was paying that flat tax. So the contemplation now is to move it to taxation because legislatively that particular parcel tax was only for that specific service. So we can't actually raise parcel taxes for that. We would have to create a new bylaw. So essentially we feel this is a more equitable way to raise revenue. And so the decision here is to raise that amount from 500,000 up to $1 million. So in essence, ratepayers would probably pay on their tax bill. It wouldn't necessarily be a big change. And what I think the caution is if we did have to fund significant capital renewal, it would mean a significant jump to people's tax bills. So again, we're trying to use that philosophy of continuing to build reserves for future needs, whatever those are going to be, knowing that we're still probably not sufficiently funding the facilities that we have right now. So that is the decision, and I think, decision for round two. So,
Thank you. Questions, discussion from the elected? The regional district board has discussed this at great length and has been fairly split on the issue. District of Sechelt Council has discussed it, and although we were fairly split on the issue, the recommendation from Sechelt Council was that it go to $1 million, which was the original recommendation from staff as part of the initial report. And so the conversation at the board table was around whether we wanted to continue with a full $1 million in the absence of a future facilities plan and knowing what we were going to be doing going forward. The first part of that recommendation talks about, capital renewal be increased by 458. And that's to cover off, the capital renewal of the existing facilities. The second portion that's highlighted was really described as developing new facilities someday down the road. And without having done the recreation needs assessment, the board was split on whether we should be saving up for some unknown or whether we should try and, give a bit of a break to the ratepayer while we figure out what future facilities are going to look like. So that's where that conversation sort of went at the board table. Director Inkster.
Yeah, thanks. Chair, just because you've gone down this road, because I've said a lot at the Sechelt table end here, I'm not going to talk much about my love of recreation and how important it is for our community. I'll leave that there. But what I think that we need to consider going forward without a plan is the clear predictability of community need for recreation and the clear predictable unpredictability of the rising costs of new facilities and or rejuvenation of existing facilities. And that's why I had spoken at both tables about the need for a certain amount of money going forward, much like we have the 3% in Seashelt for rejuvenation of infrastructure.
Thank you. Mayor White.
I think, as I think you alluded to, Chair, it would be, we have talked about this a lot at the SCRD board table, so I really hope some people who aren't at that table will bring thoughts and concerns from our municipal or the Sechelt Nation tables. But I have been thinking about this since the last time we talked about it too. I think, it's interesting, some of the calls, also in the context of some of the calls for more regional collaboration, which I think, and I've been responding to those calls to say, well, in principle, this is a good idea, but I think maybe the avenue you're proposing might be the wrong way to go. I think this makes me think of an avenue that does make a lot of sense, that ratepayers across the Sunshine Coast should accept or should expect a fairly consistent approach from all our governments towards asset management. So, I mean, I have asked our financial department, like, how would we do this? I mean, and the answer is fund asset management, really. And I mean, that's why I asked that this be, as a director, that this be deferred to this intergovernmental meeting, because I think it's valuable and wise to take kind of more of a integrated approach across the coast, intergovernmental to the expectations for asset management. It has caused me to reflect too on differences that I see in among the local governments. And even this morning, as I was driving here, I was thinking, Pebbles Beach was an example where we had to come back to council because of some geotechnical issues, and we had to dig deeper into our reserves to fund hundreds of thousands of dollars more because it was, but that happens more often at the SCRD. And I know the SCRD has been working really hard over the years, over years and years, to get asset management more evolved. And but when I say it happens more, I think of a number of things in recreation. And one of my very first meetings this term, it was a sprinkler, huge cost of a sprinkler replacement. And I think especially for some of the new directors, it was just like jaw-dropping because it failed. It just failed, and it had to be replaced. The pool, also with the pool, the slide just happened. Now that's a budget proposal that it just failed, and it was shut down one day. And we heard a lot from constituents and especially families about that. We had to replace a roof, of course, at Gibson's and Area Community Center for a huge cost. And we're kind of, picking these things off one by one. And I think for responsible financial management, it makes a lot more sense, and it's kind of needs to be the best practice and expectation of the public today, that we actually put money away in reserves to have a solid asset management plan, rather than services just failing on them and going, okay, well, I guess we're going to have to wait for the board to come up with some money from somewhere else by taxing you one by one when these assets actually fail. So I think philosophically, in my thinking and reflection on this in recent weeks, we do need to move towards a shared asset management philosophy across the coast as much as possible, which I think is why it's good to talk about it here in an intergovernmental meeting.
Fair enough. Thank you. Anybody else? Councillor Bell.
I'm just thinking about a little bit of my past experience with the YMCA, and I certainly remember being in many budget meetings and the cost to run a facility, a recreation facility, the pool being significant. I can remember many times being in meetings with the CEO where he says, I'm just going to pave it and put a skateboard park in there. Like, it's literally very, very expensive to run pools. And I think the one thing that's probably is a lot of the community doesn't know how much money it costs to run a facility, to a recreation facility. We absolutely want to be able to offer recreation that's significant to the core of a community and the well-being. But I'm just knowing in the great work you've been doing around engagement and informing the community is to try and kind of outline these costs. You know, what does it cost when, and I know it's somewhere in, probably in your communication, but, you know, we need a new slide. What does that cost? And I just think it's important that the community understands as well what it costs and what it takes to run a facility. So that's one of my comments. The other one is around the future of recreation. I will say that when I left the Y, that I think one of the last Ys to be built standalone was the Y in downtown Y in Robert Lee YMCA downtown. And they will no longer be able to build Ys, standalone Ys. So now I think we need to look at partnerships. And for example, that Robert Lee YMCA was in partnership with Concert Development now so they sold the air rights to condominiums that went to as part of that Y. And so looking forward, what are the other services that we are going to expand? And you know, is it libraries, or what are the partnerships that we can start to look at in terms of building our recreation facilities, and what does that look? And that's just something, as I say, a lens to look to the future. I really don't think we're going to be in a position to be able to build standalone recreation facilities.
Thank you. Director Bax and then Director Stamford.
That's an interesting point about the partnerships that the government can get into to help us deliver services to our constituents at the best price we can find. Well, the question I have is that I know this decision has been deferred because we still don't have a plan. And my question is there a date for a draft version of our recreation plan?
No, is the short answer to that question. Director Stamford.
Thank you. I just want to be clear. We were talking, Mayor White was speaking to the big costs that it's taking for current facilities. My understanding is that extra $500,000 per year was for new building possibilities, and that we are putting aside $500,000, like that's the plan, is $500,000 a year would be going to current fixes, including things like the slide, and yes, that first meeting where we had to spend all that money on the spray. So yeah, so I just want to be clear, is that what we're talking about?
That's to be decided.
Yeah.
And so it's to acknowledge that we have two very aged facilities. And so we need to establish what makes sense from a business case perspective. You know, are you going to spend more money trying to retrofit them versus doing something new? So those business cases need to be established. And so there's no preconceived notion. I think anticipating we're going to be building new facilities, we haven't decided that yet. So, but it's to acknowledge that we're going to have to make significant investment if we want to continue with delivering the same model and service level that we do right now, and knowing what facilities cost now, pools to build. I think Coquitlam's building one, it's something like $100 million. So it's just really expensive to build these facilities. And so it's not a preconceived decision. It's just future investment towards our either existing or new.
So I have another question. So we're talking about a flat tax. Is that a flat tax that was a flat tax that only went to people within that function? Is that correct? And that also that function is quite heavily supported by our industrial taxation. Is that part of that or not? I think so.
So in that particular scenario, the industry, any type of industrial or business was still paying the 115. It wasn't based on property assessment values. So in this particular model, that would be distributed in a different way.
Thank you. And I know that that was part of the confusion around it because it's also a change from parcel taxes to a ad valorem based on the property assessments. So yeah, go ahead, Councillor Shepherd.
Yeah, I wonder if I could ask, has there been discussion between heads of finance, SCRD, and District of Sechelt over how to look at asset replacement in future and evaluation of assets, where they stand, in terms of the end of life and replacement? Because there seem to be, just to pick up on Mayor White's comment, there seems to be two different paths chosen, which is understandable, but is there ongoing discussion of why each government has chosen a different way and whether it is moving towards a uniform evaluation system? Thanks.
From the CFO perspective, not specifically. I think our approach is very specific to the service. And so it really depends on what we can sustain within a service. And where in a regional district, it's based on who pays for those services, what is the asset complement. So we review things not in our general capital asset pool, because we can't do that at a regional district, is apply like a unified application to all of our assets because they're so different. We would do something different in our recreation facilities as we would for utility services. And the needs are different. So we look service by service.
Wastewater plants even aren't all the same rate based on the cost to replace and the cost to repair. Director McMahon?
Sure. I've been talking a lot about this at the board table, but yes, we have all these different assets with different needs, but we only have one set of taxpayers. And we're facing tens of millions of dollars for the landfill, for the Langdale well field, for other, water-related infrastructure projects that are really big. And other local governments, you guys are facing some significant costs for like sewage treatment plants or what have you. And at the end of the day, how much can anyone afford? So, people say they need recreation. I don't think so. They need water. We can't live here without drinking water. We want recreation. Us people want it very, very badly. But who pays and how much? And at the end of the day, how far can we raise property taxes? Because people are already in an affordability crunch. So I think we have to prioritize. And unfortunately, we have sort of inherited a situation with recreation facilities where if we had tried to design the most expensive model, that would be what we have. We have 5 standalone recreation facilities, 3 pools, 2 ice rinks, and they're super expensive to operate, especially the new ones. Weirdly, if you look at the finances, the 2 old facilities, the Gibson's Pool and the arena, are cheap like borscht. It's actually the new facilities that are bleeding expensive. So, we've got to think about it as a whole, as all of the costs we're facing, but also the recreation system as a whole. Where do we want to go with it? It's not going to be an easy conversation because every facility is like every dock that we have. We've got 9 docks, and every dock has, yes, but it has a group of people that just will die on that hill. And that's going to be true with our recreation facilities too. And this is just, it's going to be really hard. Just saying.
Thank you. Councillor De Andrade.
Thank you. On this specific point, I was thinking when I look at the results of the 2 surveys, the numbers are really close. So I was wondering who are answering are the same people. And I think I think what Donna McMahon mentioned, it's true. As much as I want all the recreation facilities be top-notch, but there will be financial repercussions, so we need to probably do a balanced approach. So my question is, are we reaching enough the people? Obviously, the directors will have a role to make decisions, but if we are reaching out people, how good is this outreach? Are the same people, the few people who use the facilities that are answering? So I think this is important because at the end of the day, many people are struggling with tax increases, but we want to maintain facilities. So I'm sure there will have to be the same way with the corporate work plan, look at and prioritizing and picking and choosing. But I think in terms, if you want to hear from the public, we might have to do a better outreach, I'm assuming.
Thank you. Anything else from folks? Mayor White, and I'm not seeing any other hands up, so just be cognizant of time. Mayor White, Councillor Inkster, and then we're going to move on to the town of Gibsons.
I think, especially while we have some extra representatives from the municipalities here, I'd like to kind of look down into the future of what Director McMahon is proposing or suggesting. And I think, I mean, if we're talking about the SCRD getting out of recreation, what's going to happen to the assets? Like, if we have the assets now, so we have to maintain them. That's just bottom line. We can't, and many people are reliant on them. Maybe in some views not as reliant as water, sure, but I don't see that we're at a doomsday scenario quite yet where our taxpayers are saying we need to get rid of actual services. I haven't heard that yet. Any feedback? Even though I'm probably the person most likely to be voting against budget proposals at the SCRD, I haven't heard it reach that level yet. But I want to go to this kind of look at the scenario ahead where we might want to. I think we're putting the cart a bit ahead of the horse by talking about it in terms of asset management, talking about getting out of recreation. I think that really would need to be a very extensive discussion across the coast, similar to the really difficult referendums that we had in the past, going back like 20 years, and huge campaigns. And if we're going to go back there, I think that's a whole other discussion, and I think that's something that should probably go to this coming election. We've got an election coming up. I think if that's something that any of the elected officials around this table want to throw out there and say, hey, elect me on a platform to get rid of recreation, let's go for it. Let's have that conversation. Let's have that conversation as local governments. But I also think when I bring back to the municipalities here, if the SCRD gets out of recreation, what's going to happen to these assets? I think it's going to probably go back to where it was, which is the District of Sechelt would be having to look after the pool in Sechelt and the arena in Sechelt, and Town of Gibsons will be looking after the Gibsons area. We'd just have to cross that out, maybe. Community center and the pool, but then it just goes back to the same damn conversation, which is, well, our neighbors are still using these facilities. They still value these facilities. So how are they going to pay for it? Which just goes right back to the referendum. Like I don't know why we're going back there. I mean, these are facilities that we, as a whole Sunshine Coast, whether you voted no or yes in the referendum that happened 20 years ago, it happened, and this is the route we decided to go. And now we need to look after these assets.
Thank you. Director Inkster, Director McMahon, Director Stanford.
This has become a big topic. I'm going to blame the chair.
That's fine.
Yeah. if we don't want to, I mean, people know where I am on asset management when it comes to recreation. I'm really consistent. And I was part of the original pool committee in Seashelt. Other communities have these facilities. We needed them for community building. I think we should fund the asset, and I believe that this board supports that. If you want to push against that button, or you want some community outreach, tell a seniors group they can't use the Gibson's Rec Center for exercise and or get-togethers and or card playing with each other. Hundreds of seniors use that rec center. Tell families throughout the Sunshine Coast they can't use the Seashell pool for their birthday parties. Tell the community that they can't go watch hockey in Gibson's anymore, and that the tsunami is is leaving town. It's all part of community building. We need to fund the asset. I support funding the assets. Thanks.
Thank you. We're running way over time, so I'm hoping the last two folks. Okay, Director McMahon, and then Chief. Yeah.
Okay, I did not say get the SCRD out of recreation. I'm sorry, those words were put in my mouth. I did not say that. But there are other models for doing recreation. Look at the Gibson's Curling Club. They have done it all by themselves for 50 years. Run a curling club. They built it, they operate it, and they're very successful. So maybe we need to look at different community partnerships for running our facilities. That's one of the options, but we need to look at all the options on the table. Thank you.
Thank you. I think you're going to be the last word.
I just want to echo what Silas is saying. I mean, the biggest complaint that we hear on the Sunshine Coast is lack of recreation facilities. And when that pool is down, that's all I hear. It's all over social media. Everywhere I go, I can go to the village and have a coffee and everybody's talking about it. Seniors are upset about it. Parents are upset. Children are upset. So recreation is super important to the Sunshine Coast. And when I think about 4 facilities, in my mind, I'm like, we need 8 facilities. Like, the 4 facilities are not enough, but we're barely managing it. So to be able to asset plan ahead and make sure that we're covering those costs, that's what I would support that we should be doing.
Great. Thank you very much. Okay, we're going to switch to the town of Gibson's now. If folks need 2 minutes to refill a coffee or something like that, take it, but please be quick because we're already running behind schedule. All right, and welcome back to the financial planning intergovernmental for January 29th. I think I actually missed the date as part of my opening comments. Next up, we'll turn it over to the town of Gibson. So we'll turn it over to the CFO and to the mayor for traffic managing questions.
Thank you very much. Just waiting for the presentation to come up. There we go. Well, internationally, leaders have been saying that things have changed for us all, and our Prime Minister certainly has made that point. So elements of this presentation touch on economic development and a lot of it on asset management. This is one of those economic development ones. That's an electric passenger ferry. I know everyone in this room has heard about the efforts there. Green Line now Circle. So currently it's scheduled, their work plan is scheduled for service to launch in early 2028. But of course, they have many hurdles to jump over before they'll get there. But we hope to see a passenger ferry like that running from Gibsons to Cole Harbour in Vancouver shortly. And the town of Gibsons is thinking and making the effort to ensure that all the parts the local government needs to see in place will be there one way or another. Over the last year, business groups in the province and elsewhere have expressed great interest in the efficiencies of local government. And this slide speaks to that. So first of all, the town is very focused on developing and retaining service delivery teams. It's gone through a big transition since COVID-19 with a lot of retirements and a lot of people choosing to move and work in different fields. And part of that effort of renewing those service delivery teams is making sure you've got the compensation right. So the top part was actually up on this screen here last year. We have a collective agreement through 28, which basically is geared on 2% plus paying or making up for a pre-2025 inflation gap. So, 2% is what the Bank of Canada is essentially advising all governments to focus on achieving. We're doing what we can at Gibsons. As part of making sure the compensation is fair for the expectations of those service delivery teams, Council in 24 decided, okay, we will set a point, the midpoint of a collection of 15 similar BC local governments. Our compensation will be as close as we can get it to the midpoint for our various positions. And of course, making that transition if you weren't at the P50 midpoint can be expensive. So the actual general municipal tax increases 26 through 28, that's our starting point before inflation on non-labor costs. But we're well on the way to achieving the P50, so we may do better than that. Now, the last part is a response to the challenges over efficiencies. I've worked with major nonprofits. I've worked in building financial models for startups and so on. And in the private sector, selling general administrative is 25%. It's where you start your model and then you start refining it based on the industry sector you're in and your stage of business development. So let's take 10 off the top for that, selling and marketing aspects, and say, okay, well, the maximum local government and nonprofits would be 15. Unless you have a lot of very specific general costs, like maybe you're a nonprofit that's doing scientific research and development, that you really don't need another 5. So your maximum is 10. And the big government contracts for nonprofits and sometimes for local governments that are delivering senior government services, they're not very happy if you're suggesting that you need 10 cents on the dollar or more than 10 cents on the dollar to deliver the services they're contracting for. So looking at, it's not that difficult for a local government to get an assessment of where they stand. So in 25, across the operations budgets of the town, we were at 8% for general and administrative. And in there, so those are the costs that you cannot attribute to a direct service you deliver, whatever's left over. And it's always on the admin side. So that's administration, like your CEO function, communications, like your website, corporate services, like your record systems, finance, like making budgets, HR, finding people, keeping people, staying compliant with regulations, your core IT, your purchasing, whether you have purchases or not, and risk aspects, remainder of insurance costs. So there you go. It's not a lot, but in this day and age, I think it's important for a local government to have that at hand, because I know most of us are actually in the vicinity of 10, and there's no reason why we can't stand up and say that. Okay, asset management. And this is the one that I was asked to focus on, and if you don't mind, I don't have a lot of slides to present, so maybe we could spend a little bit of time on this one, just to appreciate the detail. So yeah, it is a zone of challenge and opportunity. And it does require good systems, processes, and long-term financial planning. Starting on the left, yeah, well, let's look at the picture. So actually, we're all in a bit of a hole, and as we all know, the adage there is stop digging. And I think we're all in a position where it's not too late, but we can't afford to ignore this much longer. So on the left-hand side, everything's broken down by asset class. I mean, asset management only makes sense by asset class. All of those asset classes have different things about them that require them to be treated that way. And the first thing we all need to know is the replacement cost. If I may, yeah, just step back for a minute. So this table, I haven't seen this table before. It hasn't been offered around anywhere that I've come across. The consultant that we work with on asset management plan modeling basically took one look at this thing and said every local government should have this table. And he also acknowledged that very few local governments are actually in a position to fill in the table. But here's the best effort Gibsons can do. So that replacement cost, let's take water and sewer and drainage. That's pretty sophisticated. That's every single piece of asset for water, sewer, and drainage is in an asset management model. Its current replacement cost, as best as we know, at the town of Gibsons is in there. And we have in there, because some of the materials will change, some things may not be replaced exactly the same way, we have in there what the plan for its replacement is. So that's the current fair value of changing over those assets. I think we're running those at 80 years right now, water, sewer, and drainage, the model. Roads, you can see a color there. That's because the truth is we have to do some work there. We don't actually know what the replacement cost of the town of Gibson's roads are, but it's somewhere in the vicinity of 60 million. Buildings and parks, that's a current 2025 appraisal of all those assets at current replacement value. And we did that as part of our insurance policy. And then fleet equipment, we're updating that every year based on what the dealers have to say about the current prices for the equipment we have. So little town of Gibsons has got $312 million of assets to turn over. Now, out of those sophisticated models and less sophisticated models, you can determine your reinvestment backlog. So for water, our models say, oh, $4 million, sewer $2.5 million, drainage $2 million, and so on down the list. So in theory, we have $14.65 million in backlog. What that really is a list of, at least in the top sections, of items that we need to follow up. So our models have said, hey, you said this piece lasts 60 years. Well, it's 60 years now. do you know whether you should change it or not? Or are you lucky it's going to last another 30? So we have to look at that each year, the list that comes out, and update what the year of replacement should be in the model. The next part of this is, well, let's assume that everything in that backlog or other things that have gone wrong early mean, yeah, it is almost $15 million of work. What do you have in your reserves and surplus for each of those categories right now? Well, in Gibson's, we have $5.25 million. So we've got a cumulative savings gap of 9.4. We will, by examining the backlog items and examining other items within each of the models for those asset classes, by moving things around, primarily based on condition assessment, we'll be able to smooth that backlog down enough that where we have urgent work to do, beyond our reserve and surplus, it would be manageable to issue debt to pay for that work. So that kind of finishes one side of the table. The next one is really important from the taxation side. So those water, sewer, and drainage models kick out the average amount you need to put away every year, regardless of how much work you are or are not doing, to make the funding work. So for water, it's $1.3 million, sewer 1.5, drainage 0.4, and so on down the list. And then the next one up is, well, what's the 2025 year funding at 25-year end that you've achieved against that? So right now we're at 0.75 on water, 0.6 on sewer. We have a decision from council to organize to start a 2026 parcel tax for drainage to begin to address that we don't have anything there. Roads, buildings, parks, fleet equipment. We need a bit more information for sure on roads and buildings and the facilities in the parks. Fleet, we're not that concerned. But the annual tax gap is pretty big. That's $3.5 million. That's an awful lot of money. So again, asset management is something we're all getting better at. Maybe this represents we stopped crawling and we've just started walking. With those models, as the consultant we work with say, water, sewer, drainage, we now have to compare them next to each other. And we have to sort out, like we only want to dig up that piece of road once, if at all possible. So we have to sort out which work we're doing when, and a different utility may drive why we're going there first. That's going to help reduce some of the cost. Another thing that's going to work in here, and you know, that's over on the finance side, is we already carry a certain amount of debt in Gibson's and we're going to pay it off. So cash flow that we've got coming in through taxation or parcel taxes or whatever is funding that debt payment will allow some monies to come into funding this table. So we don't have to look at finding ways of increasing taxation for the 3.5, but we do have to do long-term financial planning long enough to see how that will fit. In the meantime, however, the 2026 focus, if you are just going to increase rates and taxation to fix at least the water, sewer, drainage side, you would raise rates or monies for operations and capital at 10% a year through 2028, and you would have reached raising $1.3 million a year there up on water. So there is, if the community is prepared to do that based on council's decision, there is light at the end of the tunnel there. Sewer, it's 10% increases through 2030, and when I say light at the end of the tunnel, I mean then at 2%, the current, whatever the current inflation rate is. Drainage, parcel tax and a frontage charge instead of municipal taxes essentially combined, it's 10% a year through 2030 before it's finally fulfilled. Roads, we can't say, we need the condition assessments we need much better building condition assessments for buildings and parks before we can be more refined there. I guess one other thing I should mention is some of us have been through this before, maybe not having all this information, but like we have been through a round pre-COVID where we're raising taxes and rates a lot for capital, for asset management. And then we got blindsided by this tremendous increase in costs that have put us right back where we are now, repeating it a second time. So the caveat on all of this is if costs can be relatively stable through the long term, you can see that Gibsons is going to make its way through this. It's just tremendously unhelpful when the central banks lose control of the money supply and we get excessive inflation. That's all I have to note on this one. Regional option steps, and I am also we're following a bit of the format of last year's presentations. So Gibson's thinking about the region and steps we can do where we are. One big area is Sunshine Coast tourism and visitor planning. Now, Sunshine Coast tourism has made it really clear to Gibsons that our role is we're the coastal gateway, okay? And they've done some pretty solid surveying, and I'm aware that most of the elected leaders and senior staff here have seen surveys or presentations from them over the last couple of years. Anyway, something that was most politely put in their reports was that the town has gaps, and because Gibsons has gaps, that lowers the coastal spend. It lowers visitor spending in Gibsons, and it lowers follow-on spending that could be working its way all the way up the coast. So that's great, but as we saw from the last slide, Gibsons is not flush, and we can't go out and address all those gaps on our own. So the solutions have to be Canada, BC, or donor-driven, and senior government grants. What activities are we up to that will close these gaps? And the community and council actually had already settled on most of these before it became really clear from Sunshine Coast Tourism, but it's nice to see that there's a match. So in the Five Corners area, in the Gibsons Landing area that you know, there needs to be some plaza placemaking. Parking strategy needs to be addressed, so that's been started, and it's all about managing the parking assets and liabilities and what strategy you're going to implement. There are some bright things coming in the future. Timing up in the air, but a circle transit route in Gibsons, upper, lower, will be very helpful as part of this. For the passenger ferry, a shuttle from an upper Gibsons parking area will be really helpful. There's $1 million to be spent in Pioneer Park, not just on the accessible washrooms, but the whole area that goes up to them, relocating sidewalks, basically making the changes that are overdue there. And in the foreshore, a new set of stairs are required from that area down to the waterfront, so that's organized. And that ramp that goes down to the wharf, one side of it needs to be properly set out for accessibility purposes, so that's in there. And more recently, it came to our attention that there was a major donor funding an organization, Swim, Drink, Fish, looking to see who was interested in creating swimming infrastructure, natural assets-based swimming infrastructure. So we've submitted an application for an Armours Beach project, the project valued at $7 million, of which the donor would fund 80% and the town would have to come up with the other 20%. As a backstop, council's notionally accepted, well, that could be debt, but we would really like to find other grant funding and we would like to find other donors. And we will find out fairly quickly from Swim, Drink, Fish if they're interested in supporting something at Armours Beach. Then it will be back to council and it will be sorted out how to proceed and how to find that other money. But it's flagged there as a new regional recreation asset because it will be of immense interest to visitors coming in on that passenger ferry. It will be already known that will be immense interest to the local community and the area around the town. I mean, we're talking about swimming lessons returning there in the summertime and all of those kinds of good things that haven't been there for a long time. So that's our package on fixing town gaps. And we've already mentioned the ferry. Oh, I should add on the ferry, though, that that Gibson's is not working as a standoffish local government, just advising on rules of the road and compliance and such. We are there as an economic development function, actively engaging with the proponents, finding how things are going, what their concerns are, relaying concerns to them. Certainly the town is doing everything to advance it that it can. On to some innovation and best practices. So last year, under Natural Assets Engineered Infrastructure, that was there. 2024 White Tower Park stormwater ponds. But the reason it's up there again is it's all part of drainage, because underneath that, Charman Creek, we've been in 25 and 26 working on a restoration project funded by Government of Canada, $6 million. Now, there's lots of benefits that come out of that project, but the one we're focusing on there today, the stop flood loss value. So that project basically takes an area that is at risk of being flooded, and let's say the area is this big. After the creeks and other items that have been disrupted in the past that are restored, that flood area is going to be substantially smaller. So if you take all the parcels that are not going to be flooded now in a 100-year flood, and you take all the improvements and the contents of what's on those parcels, so we've actually done that. If you take what was once a 200 flood and under climate change is now a 100-year flood, those floods take out everything. There is nothing left. You start over. So the value of that is $77 million. And then the value of the floods that happen every 25 years that aren't as big but are still problematic is another $39 million. So there's a 19 times value factor there. So there are other watersheds on the Sunshine Coast that would benefit from this kind of repair restoration work. We as local governments cannot afford to pay for that, but it makes great good sense for the federal and provincial governments to pay for it because they're the ones on the hook after the insurance companies for all the massive amounts the insurance companies won't pay. Not to mention the distress of if we didn't need to have parcels with improvements on flooded out, we should act to prevent that. So drainage is a really big part of our resilience activities in response to climate change, which we ourselves cannot impact terribly much. Asset management planning benefits. So again, we're just walking in our asset management shoes and we're starting to get the hang of doing this. So one thing that had been identified at the town through infrastructure was, there is an awful collection of sewer collection infrastructure that is abysmal. We must fix that. So not at that time necessarily having the money available as part of borrowing money. We borrowed $375,000. That work is being done. Now that collection system area was so rotten that it was allowing huge amounts of groundwater to drain into that system. So we're in the very early days of figuring out what's going on. But over at the wastewater treatment facility system, in the month of December, I think it was, the infiltration was down 30%. And then our guys looked at the weather this December 24, and to try and sort it out and see if they could find because they were starting to think it was this collection system rehab that might be the answer. So all they're able to say so far is, well, in the month of December, based on the amount of precipitation year to year, what went into the plant was down 30%. Does that mean that that plant now has 30% more capacity maybe? So we'll keep working on that, but it's really important for Gibsons because if we can find all the low-hanging fruit capacity to be fully available and not eaten up by things that shouldn't be reducing its ability to operate, we can put off an expansion as long as we possibly can. Because an expansion is really anywhere between 40 and 90,000 at that, 40 and 90 million dollars at that plant, and we actually have no answer where that money would come from. We can't borrow it, and we're not at all sure any senior government would fund it. So it's in our interest to make that plant dance. There was a community dialogue session in Gibsons at the high school on January the 5th. The regional district chair was actually there too. And we heard many things. And boiling this down and not necessarily hitting everything that the residents would say were the top ones, we thought we should share this. So starting in the top left, affordability, how did people feel? Well, they said, 8% municipal tax increases, 10% numbers like that, they're unsustainable in the long term. Like, it was just people saying, I can't keep doing this. The nice thing about it was the community was acknowledging that it's prepared to do it for a while, a short while if possible, if it's necessary. But the idea that every year it could always be 10% forever is just like off the table. They wondered about new construction. I mean, they'd observed, like many of us, that there hasn't been a lot in 25, and what's been out there were generally things that had already started, and what was the outlook, and perhaps there are opportunities at the town to realign resources. I mean, this was a very polite conversation, and maybe there are AI opportunities out there. What can be done, or what should the town do to make sure that it's maximizing the use of the resources it's being provided? So, generally speaking, already we're picking up some of these items in the 26 budget process, and if not, they will appear later. The question came on professional consultants. Somebody had been looking at our 24 SOFI report, and they wondered if our planning and engineering use was high and whether there are efficiencies. One of the things that wasn't appreciated is we've all received huge grants from senior governments to do huge amounts of housing-related work. So we've had huge grants coming in and huge reliance on consultants and engineers to do that work. It's a real bump, and that's starting to, as that work is starting to be completed, that'll be reduced a lot. Down the middle, safety, yep, 5 corners. Well, you've heard about the works we'll be doing there, and that will go to some level to improve that. Off-street parking, again, people are looking for the town to get creative, and they're looking to see cover the ditches and culverts program to create new off-street parking. Support for 5 Corners Plaza. Parks, a tricky one. People have been looking for a dog park, and if there are lots of unofficial dog parks in Gibsons, but an official dog park in Gibsons, and there's so many opinions on where that could be and how it should be set up and so on, that there is a parks plan being undertaken this year, and that's being referred there. Safety issues, foreshore seawalk, again, things down at the water. People are asking for better lighting, and that's something I think we have an answer for. And then just general people expressing concerns for the long term about the foreshore and the protection of property and assets, and is the town on top of this? And I don't know whether the town has all the answers, but I've certainly seen it has all the projects underway you need to find the answers, and some projects to actually get on and do things. And that's the end of this presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, William. looking for any questions from representatives of other local governments. Mayor Henderson.
Thank you. Congratulations, Mr. Wallace. That chart that you put up, you commented it was fairly unique, and I think it's hugely significant. I concur we should have that sort of thing in all local governments. The question I had when you're talking about replacement costs is, and you had, I think, 84 million of the top one. Is that in today's dollars? Like, how do you, what are you using to create that estimate?
That is today's dollars for those specific materials delivered and installed in Gibson's, so call it the Sunshine Coast.
Yeah. So that's, I mean, because that would be my overall comment to all of us. It's politically unpopular, of course, to fund future costs, but, you know, there's one word these days, and it's called Calgary. And Calgary has failed to provide the funding, the reserves for their water supply, and now they're facing billions and billions of dollars of costs that will have to be absorbed in a matter of a couple of years. So I would just encourage, whether it's back to the SCRD's 500,000 or $1 million, I suspect $1 million isn't even enough in that example. So I'd compliment you on that chart that you put up, and I hope that we can work towards embracing that through all local governments in the next year or two. Thanks. Thanks.
Other comments or questions? Director Gabius.
Yeah, thank you, and thank you for the presentation. I'm wondering, because the passenger ferry is such an exciting development that will bring a lot of tourism, I'm assuming, to Gibson's, which is fantastic. And I'm wondering, how is the town planning for the impact that that increase in tourism will have on its infrastructure? Are you considering that in your planning?
That's kind of all part of that grant application slide. I mean, it's a significant application that touches on parking, that touches on infrastructure improvements to that whole Five Corners area where I mean, I also think you know, the regional transit expansion is a really important piece to it, and that's a partnership with the regional district and BC Transit, and looking at where transit can connect to the ferry as well. So yeah, I mean, there's so many different aspects to look at when it comes. But Sunshine Coast Tourism, of course, is fully on board and is involved in a lot of the conversations as well. So I don't know. There are all kinds of different specific avenues. I don't know if you're referring to any one, but parking's one that comes up probably the most. And I mean, that was touched upon. We're looking at parking strategy, especially for Lower Gibsons, where cars or vehicles need to be moved along quicker, and ways of doing that. And even we're looking at increasing, finding new parking in Lower Gibsons, which is a very hard task, but we've got some prospects there, and also the discussion about like a shuttle associated with the ferry going to Upper Gibsons to maximize parking there too.
No, yeah, sorry. What am I looking at you for? Just used to. I'm wondering about, I know you mentioned about you playing Town of Gibson's like an economic development function in terms of your role with the ferry. Are things looking good? Are there any flags at this point that you can anticipate or you're hearing about for 2028?
In terms of the ferry or tourism?
Just in general, in terms of the ferry, like, is there anything that, where are they at in the process, I guess?
It's really been focused on Vancouver right now. Of course, there's Bowen Island, there's Vancouver, and there's Gibson's are the ports. So actually, Manny was just showing me some really great looking designs for Harbour Green in Vancouver and Cole Harbour that are moving ahead, and that's been the big focus, and really, you know, it was the biggest hang up is finding a place in Vancouver for it to dock, but it's looking really promising there. So, yeah.
In
Yeah.
terms of the port and so on.
Yeah, and the charge barge, we've got great partnership with BC Hydro for the charging aspect of it. Want to add anything, Manny? I thought I saw.
I could add, I wanted to, if we can talk a little bit, just a lot of these projects on that innovation best practices, about 10 years ago, we were in, that slide looked a lot worse than it looks today. And council was concerned with how we're dealing with the costs of climate change and the impacts that are causing in our treatment plants and coastal areas and so on, private property, and try to find a cost-effective way to close that gap. And so these three examples that we provided is where we have attempted to use or have used nature-based type solutions instead of fully engineered options, which is an important component. We're in the first case of the White Tower Pond, it's just that practice that, you know, where you have a nature-based alternative like using a pond instead of a pipe to carry storm water. Right now, that costs between 20 and 25% on a dollar. Like, why wouldn't we do it? And certainly, that's proving to be financially, and in those cases, that's sort of the policy, is looking for those types of alternatives. The second part on the creek restoration aspect, that investment per se is to avoid future losses, and the numbers are staggering without doing something about that, and the risk that our communities have of being wiped out of insurance maps because we really have to do our part, and we're investing in ourselves by doing that. So those future losses and what the return on the investment in the case of the treatment plants, our facilities are no longer tasked with just receiving and treating, you know, liquid waste in this case, that we have to contend with this additional serious factor of climate change. So we have to make our areas much more resilient. And what this all proves is it is very cost effective, and we wanted to continue to just report out on what's in 10 years. We're closer to closing that gap because of that policy of council back in 2014. So it's been good to see it in play.
Yes, thank you. Yes, to follow up with Manny's comments, I really appreciate the breadth and the ease in which you presented this information. And to me, it really highlights what Manny was talking about, is the idea of building resiliency in a cost-effective way based on what we have here, which is a really beautiful nature-based environment, which I think is the real draw here. And I think we should be using that as a real shared vision of how we reflect the coast and do it in a united way. And I think it'd be really nice to work with tourism, but with each other to, I would love to steal like your asset management ideas and your nature-based approach. It's hard to change the way we do things, but I really would like to see us moving forward with a complementary and a shared vision of the future, which is not necessarily about the past, which was about competition, redevelopment, and sort of corporate getting ahead, because I think we've reached a point where we have to appreciate what we have and work with it, and to kind of take a different approach, which also integrates nicely, I think, with First Nations principles. So I'm hoping we can have a future that way, which is very hopeful, and thank you so much. It's inspirational what you have shown here.
Thanks, Councillor McLaughlin. There anyone else? Or are we ready to move to District of Sechelt?
All right. Thank you.
Thank you, William.
Thank you, William. And thank you, Town of Gibsons. Next up is Dave Douglas, District of Sechelt. And just to let everybody know, it is 11:30 now. We were originally scheduled for 11:30, so I'm hoping at least our electeds can stay for the District of Seashell presentation and questions. But yeah, if you've got to run, no offense taken, I guess.
It depends on how fast it is, but.
That's right. So we'll turn it
I
over
do
to
have
you,
a
Dave.
12, a hard 12 meeting I have to go to, so I'm just letting everyone know that ahead of time. I'm gonna have to jump out. Meeting, I'm gonna have to leave in about 15 minutes. Yeah.
Okay, good morning, everybody. So the District of Seashell, we've been through a couple budget meetings now. So this is more of an update as where we are, where we're going, we're kind of some of the things that are affecting our budget as well. So the District of Seashell, we have two operating funds. There's a general operating fund, which houses most of our services we run, and then we offer sewer service in the district. The two sewer services are just general collection, and then we have a septage operations up on Dusty Road. As part of our consultation in our budget, we have 10 community associations, from different areas of Seashell, and we meet with them before our budget process begins, and we, ask them a bunch of questions as to what interests them in their areas. And we also did a questionnaire this year on our website. And things that affect our budget, one is any additional operating requests that staff may have, and then the capital project levels that we ask for as well. So our first meeting, December 17th, and we had a second meeting on January 14th, 2026. Staff were really focusing on trying to get early approvals. As everybody probably knows here, that early approvals really help with getting projects done and the cost of these projects. If we come in late with projects, often the costs are higher because contractors are already signed up to do other work. So that was kind of our focus as staff, to try and move things forward a little faster than we have in previous years. And so we were able to achieve that, and so staff are now working on the 5-year financial plan, which will be presented to council in the future. So for the district, the 1% property tax increase is $152,000. We do have a capital program where we are charging outright 3% cumulative for our capital contribution. And we've had this in play for, I think it's about 8 years now, 7 or 8 years. And so this amount has grown, obviously, every year. And so we're sitting at $3.021 million that we utilize or gets transferred into our capital reserve and is spent from there. We also get questions, well, where is this going to end and how much is it going to be? And, we are also working on an asset management program and plans, but we're not quite that far yet. There's some assets we know considerably a lot about, and there's other assets that we're just getting to know a little bit more. So it's a multi-year program to get to know where you're going to end up. But, we figure this is a really good start. The last council and this council both embraced the 3%. And at times we talked about more than 3% because we technically spend that $3 million every year on things that need to get done. And we still have a list of things that need to get done. So we started the year in a deficit when we started talking budget. Our new construction number is kind of estimated at $80,000. We'll get to know very soon what that overall new construction number will be for taxation for us. Our solid waste fees, they're going to stay the same in 2026. They're $303, and we're not going to look at an increase there. We're having good cost coverage at this point. We also been asked to, look, when we're presenting capital specifically, is just make an achievable capital plan versus, going too far out or going too far into the future. And so, we did focus on that this year. And, our council knows that most of our projects, especially in the ground projects, they're really a 1.5-year project. They used to be about a year. Now they're probably mostly 1.5 years out. So that doesn't mean we're not spending money for 1.5 years. That means it takes about 1.5 years to complete. And so we figure, so this year our capital ask was just over $4 million, which is probably the lowest it's been. Well, the lowest it's been since I've been there. And so, we work towards making it achievable. We also have this other program, we call it the additional operating requests, things that are front and center in our community that may exist one year and don't exist in another year. And so our ask this year was $402,000. And the thing that's really front and center for us right now is community safety. We have some issues around that. We are working towards resolution. It's not something that's coming, it comes fast. Many communities are dealing with this. And so, we're putting money to this year. We did last year as well. And so, this is where the biggest hit for us is with community safety. And but it's the biggest thing facing us right now. So just a few of the projects in that $4 million. I've just gone through and just listed the projects, and really to show you where we're spending our money. So in community services, whether it's accessible playground, beach accesses, Proctor Bike Park, whoops. I had about 8 slides in there and I don't see them now. Okay, so I had a list of 8 different sections. Transportation, we're spending money on our roads, sidewalks, equipment. We're spending money on new vehicles and equipment within the district. And obviously, we spend capital on our sewer, and I'm not quite sure where those slides have gone, but they're not there now. So anyway, this is kind of an overall summary of where we're spending our money, not including sewer here. But so engineering and public works, that's really our networks and our road networks and our sidewalks and facilities. Facilities has taken up another large chunk of our capital funding this year. Once again, years gone by, councils, we never spent a lot of time with putting money into our facilities, and now it's coming forward as an issue for us. So sewer and septage, so although we have a sewer operating fund, we kind of earmark sewer and septage as separate. One is a facility we operate really for the entire coast, which is septage. And then we have our own sewer treatment plant and collection system. So 1% increase to fees in the sewer operating fund, and this doesn't include septage, is $34,000. We had operating costs, new additional operating costs of $153,000 and sewer capital of $325,000. We jump over to septage, a 1% increase to fees is $4,800. We had additional operating requests of $170,000 and capital of $15,000. And, from a financial perspective, it's not financially sustainable. Not sure what happened to the word at the bottom, but so this is a bit of a worry for us. We have a facility there that we're on leased land, and the lease on that land goes till 2031, I believe. So we have some planning we need to do, and we have started that. But it is a service that we offer the entire coast there. So just a little bit of a summary. At our second meeting, we were able to achieve motions of the council as to our direction in our 5-year financial plan. So we're looking at a 6% general tax increase. 3% of that is for the cumulative capital, and then 3% for operations. Once again, this was important for council to have a more reasonable tax increase because our increases over the last couple of years have been higher than this. No increase to solid waste. Approved capital of just over $4 million, and general operating expense increases of $402,000. We're also looking at a 5% increase to sewer user fees and to the Dusty Road hauling fees, and approved capital of $340,000, and sewer additional operating costs of $323,500. Thank you. And I think that's it for me. Any questions?
Great, thanks, David. Questions, folks? Wow, everybody's hungry. Perfect. Oops, sorry, Donna, there, please.
Yeah, every year we appoint somebody to the sewer committee, the regional sewer committee. It hasn't met since I've been here, but we make the appointment every year. What's the deal on that? Just curious, because I am concerned about your septic facility. It's critical for the rural areas, and we need to make sure that it's good for the long term.
I know we have a sewage facilities commission between the district and the Sechelt. Are we talking about that committee or?
The liquid waste management plan update.
Okay, that one. Don't know. Dave, anything?
We could refer to.
I don't want to grab a microphone there. Make it there.
Yes, thank you. So the Sewer Facilities Commission is part of our liquid waste management plan, and it was for the joint decision-making initially for the wastewater treatment facility. Through a number of challenges over the last, since I've been in this with the organization, there's been difficulty getting it going again. But the idea being we make joint decisions about joint facilities. So it's something that we continue to try to move or change so it's more functional. But yeah, you're correct. It hasn't met for a number of years. Thanks.
Councillor Shepherd. Yeah, can I just echo the comment that Director McMahon mentioned? Our septic facility is coming to the end of its life. Half the residents in Sechelt are on septic fields. So and I think I've seen a very preliminary number for a replacement of that facility. It's about $1.5 million. So we have a lot of people who are using that facility who don't live in Sechelt. So it's really sort of regional service, but it's the District of Sechelt that's paying for it. So that is an item of concern. I know that Director Lee has a study underway to look at options for what to do, replace the facility, close the facility down would be one of the options, but that's coming forward to the district. Thanks. Chair, we'll pass it back to you.
Thank you, David. All right. Thanks for all the presentations, everybody. Mayor White, I see you've got to run. Yep, thank you for that. Thank you for being here. Any last minute questions from the elected? We don't have anybody in the physical gallery with us. I don't know if we've got any virtual attendees that have any questions. No? Okay. Director Bax.
Yeah, just to circle back to the comments that we just talked about, the septage facility. And we discussed that there was perhaps a committee that worked on that. Is there going to be, is that going to be revived? Will there be a committee that includes perhaps representatives from the rural areas who depend on this kind of system? And I'd like to see what's being budgeted for capital renewal and how we can make sure that this system continues to work for the people of the Sunshine Coast.
I think those are all questions that are going to come out of the study that's currently underway. Yeah, thank you. All right, and with that, thank you for coming, everybody. This meeting is available to view on YouTube, and further information on each local government's budget can be found on their respective websites, so scrd.ca, gibsons.ca, or seashelt.ca, or by contacting one of your local elected representatives. So thank you very much and have a good rest of your day.